Okay, and there we are live. Good day and welcome back to another episode of the Air Force Podcast. My name is Yaku, and today we've got Dr. Robert Heath Meeks with us. Thanks a lot for being here. Thanks a lot for your time today, Dr. Robert.
Hey, thanks for having me on here. Yeah, I'm glad to be here, and thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thank you for the work you are doing. And on that note, how did you start? How did you say, okay, I'm going into the psychology part and I'm going into the kind of mental health things? Please tell me about that story of yours.
I had not intended to go into psychology. I had two, as I saw it, career options, and one was following in my dad's footsteps of being a carpenter, a builder, building homes and things like that. And I grew up doing that, and I enjoyed the mechanics of just just the structure of the foundation of a home and finally getting the roof on it and all the engineering that went into it. And then for whatever reason, when I got started in college, it was the early days of Apple Computer, and we had this big room called the Apple Orchard. And I fell in love with computing. I thought I would be a systems analyst. But at the same time, I got introduced through my mentor at the college I went to. You had to have a faculty mentor and a student mentor. And a shout out to Mike Cumnock, who is my faculty mentor, and put me in his human behavior in the social environment class, HBSC 1. Um, and there's an HBSC 2. There used to be a standard fair in psychology. His program was actually social work, so I got started in social work, and I just loved it. It really seemed familiar, the mechanics, the structure of building a proper mindset with the structure of building a house, and there's foundational things, and then there's supporting networks, and then we kind of fly above and just see the roof of that when we interact with each other. But then it became a way of kind of figuring out myself, figuring out the losses I'd had. I lost my mother when I was young, and figuring out uh, the dynamics of my family and the struggles that they went through. And I'm a bit of a Columbo character, the detective on TV, kind of a modern day Sherlock Holmes. And I just like investigating things. I actually never went to college to get a job. I just went to college to learn. Getting a job and paying for everything was a distant thought. And so, like a lot of people, racked up the student loans. But my favorite thing in the world was going to college and just learning things. And I became a quadruple major. I majored in social work, and then I added psychology, and then I added religion philosophy, and I finally added speech. And I graduated with 4 undergraduate degrees, and then I went on to masters and got a master's in social work and a master's in psychology. And then I capped that off with a PhD in neuropsychology and a PhD in forensic psychology. And I'm still learning. I mean, just because I have pieces of paper on the wall behind me doesn't mean that I can stop learning, because the more I know, the less the more I realize that the less I know, and so it's just lifelong learning.
Yes, okay, that is a long and comprehensive CV. How long did it take you to get all of those degrees? And as you said, the
Oh
papers,
gosh,
how did it
undergrad
long
was
did it take
6
you?
years. Yeah, undergrad was
Mm.
6 years. 4 degrees in 6 years. Masters, gosh, how long was masters? It's been a while since I added it up. I think it was 8, which is really kind of weird to think about. It took me longer to get 2 masters than it did 4 undergrad degrees. And altogether, I think it was maybe, gosh, what's the math on that? Maybe uh, uh, 14 years, something like that, after high school.
Yes, okay, okay. And did you enjoy studying for so long? Did you
Oh
enjoy
yeah.
the whole process of learning and gaining new information, gaining new knowledge, doing the research, finding out about new things that you enjoy?
Oh, if someone would pay me to just go to college, I would take that job in a minute. But my wife said, "Hey, it's time to get out of school and get a job.
Okay. So it was kind
Otherwise,
of like a peer
I'd
pressure
still be this
thing.
old guy sitting in class with teenagers, you know."
Okay. Yes, definitely. And you mentioned that you had a mentor, and that is actually a huge part of your success. Um, would you say that being a mentor or having a mentor rather and being a mentee is crucial these days, is crucial for people to learn more, get better, and achieve success at the end of the day?
Absolutely. You know, the strange thing, Yaku, is as essential as that is to success, most people don't. Women are more likely to have mentors than men. Um, there's some men that well, I mean, you know, our first mentor is really engineered to be our dad, and many guys grow up without dads though, and the mentor may be a coach or a neighbor or some farmer that you work with, but the problem in male society today is there's not enough healthy mentors, and guys don't think they need mentors, or when they find a mentor, it's not really a healthy mentor. You know, have lots of guys. Why do guys join gangs? Well, because it's a mentorship. They're just being mentored in the wrong stuff. And I think that men need to step up, healthy men, and and be that mentor. You know, on social media, you'll see a lot of guys that will put themselves out there as mentors, but it's not healthy stuff, and so it's kind of buyer beware. Um, just just because you've lived for a minute and you think you got it figured out, let me just tell you that you don't have it figured out. I don't have it figured out, but I work very hard at it, and it's one of my favorite quotes from Socrates, who, when I think as the legend goes, or maybe now it's a myth, but as the legend goes, the Oracle of Delphi had said that when asked who is the wisest in all of Greece, she said Socrates. There's no wiser than Socrates. And as the story goes, Socrates responded to that when confronted by saying, "I'm only wiser than this man because in not knowing, he thinks he does know. Whereas I, in not knowing, know that I do not know." And the wisest thing you can realize in life is not what you know. I mean, that's the easy part. I challenge some of the guys out there that you think that you know it all. Just take an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, you know, a normal sheet of copy paper. Put a dot, pretend that that is all of knowledge. That is the entire universe of knowledge. That piece of paper, and then put a circle on that sheet of paper representing how much of that knowledge you possess. I do that with people regularly. It amazes me how big of a circle they draw. I've had some people draw a circle that encompasses half the sheet of paper, and they think that's being conservative. I have people that draw a circle that's the size of a silver dollar or a quarter. You're in South Africa.
Yeah. Yes.
What do you have quarters? What's the unit of monetary
Oh,
exchange over
yeah,
there?
yeah. Our currency is rands, but we still have our coins. We have rand coins, and then we also have the cents that represents your quarters and that kind of things. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I have people that draw that size circle, and then inevitably it gets to be my turn, and I said, "Let me draw the circle representing my knowledge." And I can't make one small enough. It's literally just a pinprick dot, and I say, "But that's too big." Because I don't think that I know all that much. You know, I get accused of being a know-it-all, but I'm not. I mean, one of my favorite things to say is, "Gosh, I don't know." And I'll have people say, "Well, gosh, you're the doctor. You should know." And I said, "Well, I got doctorates. I don't have a degree in everything. These are just pieces of paper on the wall." And so, the job of a mentor is not to know everything, but be able to simply take the journey with someone else in their own self discovery and their own realizing that they don't know everything. And so there's a lot of mentors out there. It's, come to me and I'll, you know, bequeath you with all this knowledge. It's really more of helping someone else figure out how to think about their own thinking. And
Okay,
we
and
don't
then
have enough of that.
and then on that mentorship note, how should we distinguish between this is the mentor that I'm going to follow, and this is the ones that isn't good for me, isn't going to be helpful for me on my journey? Because as you said, there's a lot of knowledge, a lot of information out there, but how should you find the one that is right for you and is essentially right in the whole?
Well, I think that's a great question. And I think that's a question that most young men don't ask because, and I was, of course, young once. And I think that when you're younger, you look for what you think is success. You look for the flash, the shiny, and but that gets pretty dull as you get older. You wind up seeing that the big fancy sports car, it winds up it's just a big, you know, piece of machinery, and happiness will not come from that. A big bank account, you come to see the happiness does not come from that. One of my favorite quotes about money comes from the father of the current owner of Forbes magazine, Malcolm Forbes Jr. His dad, someone asked him. Of course, back then a billionaire that was a lot of money. Today it's not much, I guess, but I think he was close to a billionaire. But someone asked him, "How much more money do you want to make?" And he said, "Just one more dollar." So that's the thing, is that there's never enough. If you make your goal money, you will never have enough money. People look at Elon Musk, and I think the difference in him and a lot of people with a lot of money is where he places meaning. And I don't think he places a lot of meaning in money. As a matter of fact, I think he places no meaning whatsoever in money. That's I think that's what's made him so successful, is he was willing to risk all the money he had for something that he believed had meaning, and that is, becoming a multiplanetary species. And he was willing to lose everything to obtain that. Even being broke and being homeless, he's willing to do that. And I think that's part of the secret, is that money is kind of like a vehicle that can get you places, but it's never gonna be the pinnacle of success, and it's never gonna really it's not gonna add any meaning to your life. Uh, uh, the meaning is discovered along the way. So back to your question, how do you find who to follow? A couple things I'd recommend. One is it needs to be sustainable, and that is it can't just be something that is helpful now. It's something that may take you into your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. Um, I'm a big workout buff. I work out every day doing something. I'm going to do a 10K bike ride after we get off our call today, and I do one of those every day. And so I've been in the gym a long time, and I'll see guys working out, and they're trying to sling around heavy weight. And I say, "Gosh, man, for your size and your age, that's pretty impressive. But I'll be more impressed if you're still here a decade from now or 2 decades from now." So if, the advice that you're following now is not going to sustain you into your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 80s, and 90s, it's probably not the best advice. Now, something that comes to mind is the PUA movement, the pickup artist movement. There's a whole population of these guys on the internet that say things like, they're trying to create scarcity, which is a sales technique. If you want to sell a book, get your copies fast because we only have 3 copies left. Amazon uses it. They put on their website, only 3 nerds on a rope are left or something like that. But then these PUA guys try to use this in relationships, which is a really terrible idea. Be unavailable, ignore her, don't answer her, uh, distance yourself. Those are terrible, terrible pieces of advice, and will sabotage your relationship. So the bulk of the PUA pickup artist advice out there, you should toss it out. I may see something every now and then because I do this whole masculinity science thing on X called Real Men Psych at Real Men Psych, and then on Instagram it's called Doc Heath Daily. And but mostly I just run into a lot of nonsense put out there by guys that they're probably not in a healthy relationship. They've probably not been around a really long time. They don't have a lot of life experience, but they think they know everything. And taking that kind of advice is going to ruin your relationships. So it needs to be sustainable. The second thing is that it needs to be generalizable. And this comes from the famous philosopher Immanuel Kant. He had a thing called the universal imperative or categorical imperative. And the question really is, imagine, well, let's just take the PUA thing. Imagine that you're a dad, and you have a daughter, and your son-in-law comes to you and says, he calls you dad or whatever. And he says, Dad, I'm married to your daughter. Or I'm dating your daughter. Imagine that you're just dating his daughter. What do I need to do to really energize the relationship? I'll guarantee you, as a dad, you would never tell a potential son-in-law to treat your daughter the way a lot of these pickup artist guys recommend treating women. So is it universalizable? Can you imagine yourself giving this advice to someone in a relationship with your daughter? Could you imagine a mother, being a woman, giving this advice to her son? And if it's not generalizable, then it's useless advice. As they say, opinions, advice are like belly buttons. Everybody's got one, and most people think that theirs has less length than everybody else's. But it really should be generalizable. A third one you might look and see, is this recommended by professionals? And I've done provided clinical services since the early '80s, and as a private practice clinician since 1993, so a good long time. And I would never use that. I would never use any of that. People come to me after they've used stuff like that, having ruined their relationships. And so social media is about like experts on social media, it's about like eating chicken. You need to realize that you need to eat the meat and spit at the bones. And with social media, it's mostly bones. There's lots and lots of things out there that you'll just choke your life on, and it's just not the best advice. But I guess those are a couple things that it's sustainable, it's generalizable, it's validated, reliable information used by professionals in the field. Um, Imagine if I was teaching you how to work on a diesel truck, and I was going against every principle of diesel mechanics used by actual diesel mechanics. You should not follow my advice.
Okay, yeah, definitely. And you've mentioned now this chase for money, this chase for material things, the the whole rat race for to post on social media your fancy car, your big house. Why do you think that is the case these days? As you said, Elon Musk is probably not into those things. He's into other things. He isn't into the money thing. He isn't into the materialistic things. Why do you think a lot of people are into the materialistic parts of life and they want to have the money, the shining car? What do you think?
Um, I don't know for sure. I don't think it's one thing. I think it's many things. I think that one of the largest is because we have come as a society to define that as success. It's kind of like beauty. You know, the definition of beauty has changed over the centuries. Back in the, I don't know, the um, 15, 1600s or whatever, 1700s. Beauty being a really wafer thin thing where, women are wafer thin and you can see, count every rib they have. And is a really new thing. It's a really new thing because back then, uh, people would look at super thin women as being sick. If you're really really thin as a woman, there's got to be something wrong with you. You're emaciated and you must have some disease. Um, and and since this concept of beauty has been put on every magazine, the human brain, uh, modern human brains have developed a pattern that is labeled beauty. And when we see somebody that differs from that pattern, we think beauty, not beauty. And so our definition has changed. Um, and likewise, success has been defined as money. I see this also where sometimes and no offense to teenagers. I have a son who was recently a teenager, a really smart kid. He's in med school now, but kids his age are told you attract women by having a fancy car and a big bank account, flashy clothes, things like that. And I think that's a terrible idea too. I think that you should take care of yourself. I think that you should have a good work ethic and you should do something with yourself. But you're looking on screen at a guy that when my girlfriend met me, who's now my wife, we've been together for 40 years now. I was wearing jeans with holes when holes in jeans were not in style. I had holes in my jeans because I spilled battery acid on my jeans, and it's the only pair of jeans I could afford. So that's the jeans I wore. I wasn't in fashion. I was just a poor kid. I was a bit of a juvenile delinquent. I didn't have my own automobile. Um, I was. You would look at me and said, "Man, nothing ever is going to happen to this guy," and so having a fancy car and fancy clothes and all that, I don't know. I guess there's nothing wrong with that if you put that in perspective, but that is not a predictor of future success.
Mm,
And I now live in a very nice home. I have a 60,000 gallon pool out back. I have a spa, a pool house, an outdoor kitchen with a Chicago brick oven pizza. I live on a, I don't know, $750,000 property, and all that from a kid that when I moved to my state, we didn't have indoor plumbing. We had an outhouse, and we walked. No, no kidding. It was where we moved to. It had no electricity, no indoor plumbing, and you had to literally draw water from a well in a utility room. And the well bucket was about as big around as my windshield here um, on my mic, and you heated it on a wood stove. And so your present circumstance is not a predictor of future success. You can have a car and be a failure. You can have a ton of money in your bank account and be a failure. I do work with millionaires who are not successful people in their personal lives, and it's a very empty life to live. But I think to answer your question, that's what's been put up as success. And the second factor is we have a huge self-esteem problem with men learning to find value in just being a man, because for some reason in our current media situation, it's just politically incorrect to be a man. And if by bad luck you wind up being born a man, then by all means don't be a masculine man, because the only thing worse than a man is a man who is masculine. That's a no-no. And you hear this nonsense about toxic masculinity. Listen, that there's no such thing as toxic masculinity. There's no such thing as toxic positivity. There's no such thing as toxic people. The definition of toxic is something that is poison, and if I eat it, breathe it, am exposed to it, it will make me sick or make me die. Now, masculinity won't do that. Positivity won't do that. Now, that's different than other people's behavior, but thinking that things are toxic to you is one of the most disempowering things that you can think. I encourage people, listen, take your power back. Stop convincing yourself that things out there are toxic to you just by being around them. Listen, I've worked with people that were rapists and murderers and a couple serial killers. Were they toxic to me? No. How could they get inside the vault of my skull and do anything to me? I am what I am. I think what I think. I have control of my thoughts. I have control of my mindset. I'm not going to farm that out to somebody else. And so I encourage men, take your power back. It's you that control the temperature, so to speak, the weather of your mind. Don't farm that out to other people, and don't let people tell you that just because, I don't know, you speak with a deep voice, or you may be a little bit dominant or something. Be kind, caring, respectful, courteous, but be you. I mean, you're if you were born a man, you were created to be a man. And men tend to be masculine. What's masculine? Well, I think the most masculine thing we can do is sacrifice what we want to lift someone else up. So the most masculine thing, the most powerful you can be, is use who you are to raise someone else up, hold someone else higher. And getting back to relationships, that's one of the most important things in relationships. Is I tell people all the time, relationships aren't Burger King. What's the Burger King motto? Come here, have it your way. In a relationship, you can have one of two things, but not both. You can get your way, or you can have the relationship, but you can't have both. In relationships where you insist on having your way, that's going to sabotage that relationship. You can have the relationship or have it your way. You can't have both. Life ain't Burger King, and relationships aren't Burger King.
Okay. And you've mentioned now that there isn't such thing as toxic masculinity. There isn't such thing as toxic positivity. And now I want to focus on the toxic part. A lot of people say that they don't like where they are working, they don't like their jobs because it's a toxic environment. There's a lot of negative people, so they are negative as well. So you know that whole story. What's your opinion on that? What's your take on that? What would you say people should do to themselves, or change their mindset around that part? What do you think?
Well, I love talking about that. I post about that on social media quite frequently, at therapy_bites, on X. Had a conversation with a lady, and I said, "Can you imagine labeling a coworker toxic, which means they're poisonous to you? They'll make you sick or make you die, which is, unless they have some communicable disease, that's not how that works. But we can convince ourselves of anything." And I said, "Can you imagine quitting your job?" And she actually responded back, and she said, "That's exactly what I did." That's exactly what I did. According to her, with all due respect to her, because she's probably a wonderful lady, but she is, here's the new word for some of your audience, she is underthinking it, meaning she is ignoring other important aspects of the situation. Now, luckily, or actually maybe unluckily, unfortunately, she had the latitude to give herself permission to do that. Imagine what would be required in a person's personal life to just be able to quit a job. Well, that's fine if you have that latitude. But I asked her, what about the single mother of 7 children who has rent to be paid and groceries to buy? But she's working around a person which she's maybe come to label toxic. What is she going to do? Risk being homeless, risk her children going hungry and quit the job? Absolutely not. What would she do? She would double down and keep freaking working the job to bring home money. And that's what she would do. We give ourselves, see, this is one of the most disempowering things. And I'm muting my phone because even though I muted it, I'm getting all these Discord beeps, and I don't know if you can hear it on camera. So we give ourselves this permission of I can't take this and I can't take that and I can't take that other thing. But psychologically, here's how that works. Let's look at the frame of the camera as a boundary. And if we say, I'm trying to get on camera here, if we say, I can't take that, then that boundary narrows. And everything outside the boundary is things we can't take. And we convince our brain we can only take what's inside the boundary. Oh, but wait a minute. Then I can't take that. And so we narrow that box of existence even tighter. I can't take that. We narrow it even tighter. Oh my goodness, I can't take that. And we narrow it ever more till really there's very little we can take. But only because we convinced ourselves of that. Things that are toxic are things that will measurably, medically make you sick or make you die. I've never read on a death certificate, cause of death, toxic coworker. Man, if we could have just fired that guy, we wouldn't have had to bury so-and-so. That'll never happen, which means it's not toxicity. It's that I'm telling myself I can't take something, which I really can. Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you are correct. Henry Ford. And my dad used to say that too. Henry Ford was Elon Musk before Elon Musk or even his grandparents ever lived, probably. Ford Motor Company, you know. Whether you think you can or think you can't, reality is created first inside the brain and it is projected onto the world. And I'm just one where I don't tell myself I can't do stuff. I mean, I know there's stuff I can't do, but unless it's against the laws of physics, it can be done. So be very careful what you tell yourself you cannot tolerate, because what you tell yourself you cannot tolerate will come to be known as a fact inside the vault of your skull, whether it's in reality a fact or not. People who don't have communicable diseases, people that haven't been irradiated, cannot be toxic to you unless you tell yourself they can be. It's really the same thing about stress. You know, people say stress will kill you. It won't. People say stress is bad for you. It's not. As you sit there, the stress, the weight of the entire planet is pulling on your body. The entire planet. We call that gravity, by the way. Is that going to kill you? Well, I think it's going to keep you from floating to Mars. Therefore, it's saving your life. Right now, there's things that you have to do. Got to do this, got to do that. I have to wash this cup. I know I got to wash it. Is exerting a stress against my existence on the planet. And that's what stress is. Stress is the weight of life against your existence. Well, that's normal. So here's what the research shows. The research in longitudinal studies where they took big groups of people, tens of thousands of people, and you can look this up on Google Scholar. Don't take my word for it. There's actually a great video about this by Dr. Kelly McGonigal on TED Talks. Big groups of people. And they studied people and found out that people with high levels of stress had foreshortened longevity. They just died quicker. Well, hey, we knew that. But wait a minute. They found out that people with low levels of stress died at the same frequency. So if people under equivalent levels of stress die more quickly and at the same rate, people with people with low levels of stress die at the same rate of people with high levels of stress. It can't be the level of stress. Well, then they started digging into the stress and measuring the stress. They found out that people with high levels of stress died if they catastrophized that level of stress by saying things to themselves like, this is going to kill me. I can't stand it. I can't take it. Got to get rid of it. I got this toxic person, this toxic work environment, this toxic family member. It's just too much stress. It's just going to kill me. Well, they tended to die more quickly. But people with low levels of stress that catastrophize that low level of stress die just as quickly. The confounding part was when people with the same high level of stress died at different rates. And what did they discover? People with high levels of stress that had healthy cognitions, healthy thought patterns about the stress had zero impact because they would tell themselves things like, I have more to do than I prefer. I don't prefer working around this butthead. My boss is a butthead. The office has no air conditioning. They give me too much to do, but oh well, that's part of life, part of it. And the people that decatastrophized it, it had no statistical impact on their health or their longevity. It's not the stress, it's literally how you frame it in your mindset.
Yes. And
So if stress is killing you, it's not the stress, it's your thoughts about stress.
okay, and then you said the stress is measured. How do you measure stress? Is there a scale? How do you do that?
There's lots and lots of scales. I don't recall the scale that they used, but yes, you can measure stress. I can't think offhand of the famous one that was actually developed, I think in the 40s or 50s. But it lists what is that called? I didn't know we are going to talk about this. I would look that up. It's been a long time since I looked at it. But even things we desire in life exert stress. You want to have a baby, you want to have a child. Well, having a child exerts stress. You want a lot of money. Guess what? Winning a lot of money exerts stress. A funeral, a death exerts stress. Um, uh, Buying a new house. You want a new house, but you buy one, but that exerts stress. Both things we label positive and negative exert stress on our existence. But it's not that weight of stress that is the problem. It's how we decide to manage it. And it's a bit of a juggling act. But instead of getting rid of stress, people, on social media, you see a lot people talk about, hey, pay me X number of dollars, I'll help you get rid of your stress. Well, the only way to do that is to take away everything you own and put you in a box. And then you can live in a box, but there's no stress in the box. and that's it. Uh, Otherwise, if you have a house, if you have a family, if you have a dog, if you have a vehicle, if you have a job, if you have tickets to the movie theater, the ball game, all those are going to exert a weight upon your existence. And it is that weight upon your existence, which is stress. So, since you can't get rid of it, let's get better at it. And that's what a mentor should do. And with men, that's one of those valuable things we can do is to help other men find meaning. That's the most important thing, finding meaning in their stressors. Look at the end of that word, stressors. ORS, or as I may say, OARS, like oars in the water as you're rowing your boat. A stressor is simply the oars of your existence in the waters of life. It's how it's meant to be. Life is meant to have stress. That is part of life. And again, who wants to live in a box? Get out there and live life, but you're going to have stress, but you can get better at it.
Okay. And then, what is your definition of stress, or what is the total definition of stress that is generally used? Because a lot of people say, okay, they're stressed, but then it's not. What, yo,
Well, that's a good
what is
question.
that? Yo.
People get stress mixed up with anxiety. People say, I'm stressed out. Well, catastrophizing things to do, catastrophizing the oars of your existence in the water of life, catastrophizing that causes anxiety. But that's different than stress. Stress on its own does not cause difficult levels of anxiety. And then when you have anxiety, you start catastrophizing the anxiety. Let's just take anxiety for a moment. If I were to say to your audience, let's do the red pill, blue pill thing. I get them mixed up which one is which. I have to go back and watch The Matrix. I have a red pill. And if you take the red pill, you will continue to have anxiety. If you take the blue pill, you'll never have anxiety again. You will actually lose the ability to have anxiety. Now, think about that for a moment. Which one are you going to take? Well, I would say the majority of your audience are going to say, give me the blue pill. Man, I'll get rid of my anxiety. Man, I'm done with anxiety. No more anxiety. Well, that's another example of underthinking. You're ignoring important aspects of the situation. Ignoring important aspects of the situation. And what are you ignoring? Well, you're ignoring that you probably need to get new living room furniture more frequently. Why is that? Well, unless you have, if you have cloth furniture, it will begin to smell because since you lack anxiety, you're unable to take seriously the pressure of urine on your bladder, and you'll just sit there and urinate all over yourself in your living room furniture. The pressure of urine against your bladder creates enough anxiety to get you up into the toilet. Anxiety. You would starve to death because you wouldn't take seriously any kind of hunger pain, and they would say, "Oh, what happened, Dr. Heath? He's all emaciated here. Oh, he just lay there and starved to death." Well, anxiety gets you to the dinner table. Anxiety gets you to work. Anxiety gets you out of the middle of the highway. If you had no ability for anxiety, we would say, "Hey, a truck," and you would say, "Oh," and then you'd be flat. See, anxiety is absolutely necessary to our survival. Now, by the way, there are people that congenitally, by birth, they were born with deformed amygdala. For whatever reason, the fight or flight mechanism of the brain just doesn't work properly. These people become professional patients, and if they're not discovered, they actually do stupid things to get themselves killed. And but they become professional patients. One such lady, they were experimenting on her. She literally had no ability for anxiety or fear. They took her to a reptile farm. She wanted to hold the black mamba. Just let me see. You know, the most poisonous snake in the world. I just want to hold it. It'll bite you. You'll die. No, no, no. It's okay. Let me just see it. I want to pet it. So anxiety will save your life. Anxiety is a bit of an indicator light of, hey, you, this thing right here, this may be important. Now, anxiety cannot decide for you whether something is important, but it's a bit of an indicator light on the dashboard of life saying, hey, you might want to take a look, kind of like a blinking gas light. And it goes off in my vehicle. My wife says, oh, you got to stop and get gas, because she thinks if you only have a quarter of tank left, you're empty. I think that you got to be on the E to be empty. She thinks it's a half a tank. So see, we're both interpreting that indicator light differently. But without anxiety, you'd run out of gas all the time. You know, why do you stop get gas? Well, I saw that light blinking, but it was meaningless, you know. So you wouldn't want to take the blue pill. You need to take the red pill. Anxiety is an important thing. But where does anxiety come from? Anxiety comes from our thought processes. We first engineer our thoughts, and then our thoughts engineer our life.
Okay. Yeah, and yeah, that's actually a big comprehensive answer regarding that. And uh, now I want to ask you this thing about uh, into mental health. This thing, depression. A lot of people suffer from depression. Is that also a form of stress? Is that also from a lot of anxiety that it develops into depression? Is it just your brain that doesn't give the right hormones? What is it, and what do you think is a big cause of that? And how can people, like, I wouldn't say stop it, but prevent that from happening?
Well, let me dispel one myth, and that is you go to your doctor, and your doctor shouldn't. um, he's a doctor, but that also doesn't mean he knows everything. Um, a doctor says, "Well, you must have a chemical imbalance." That's a myth. I always ask patients, "How was this chemical imbalance measured? Did he stick a probe? Did he insert a probe in your anus, in your ear, in your mouth, up your nose? I mean, how did he come up with this conclusion? There's a chemical imbalance. Did you do a blood test? There's no blood test, by the way. These days, there actually is a test, but your insurance wouldn't pay for it. It'd be ridiculously expensive, and no one does it. It's just kind of experimental, and it would not give us good data anyway. So, the myth that depression is caused by a chemical imbalance is just that, it's a myth. The second myth is that emotions are supposed to be static, like a smooth ocean. They're not. And uh, it really depends on whether the depression is congruent, a good fit with a given situation. Imagine a dear family member dying and you don't have the ability to be depressed. Well, that'd be kind of odd, wouldn't it? You know, you go to the funeral and people say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Your loved one was, horribly murdered. You got to go sometime. I guess you just, we're going to go eat pizza after this. Are you doing okay? Oh, yeah, man, I'm great. I mean, now the funeral was expensive. The funerals these days are just ridiculous, they had insurance. I was going to use the insurance to go to Disney or something, but we had to use to bury them, and it was just expensive. Aren't you sad? Yeah, I'm sad about the money. The money. But if not for the money, it'd be okay. You got to go sometime. Well, see, that'd be really odd. So, never let somebody tell you that depression is a problem if the depression is a good fit for the situation. You lose a job, you're depressed. Well, I mean, unless you wanted to be fired, why wouldn't you be? You're having relationship problems, you're depressed. Well, I would hope so. I would hope that relationship is serious enough where you'd be a little bit down about it. So there's a difference in depression and clinical depression, and depression is much overdiagnosed, like many mental health diagnoses are tossed about too frequently and too quickly. But depression, you can think of mood like the weather, or emotion like the weather, emotions like the weather, and mood is like the climate. And so, if emotion carries on long enough, it can develop a pattern where that weather pattern changes the climate in your brain. And that is a thought based process. You may not know what the thoughts were, but thoughts over time develop into these things we call an anxiety disorder. And I don't even like calling it anxiety disorder. It's really a thought-based disorder. It's really a cognitive disorder. And then what makes depression worse is we do fewer things. For instance, my dad, who was a carpenter, he was killed in a fall. He fell about 35 feet, and it killed him. And that's been many years ago, but it was still tragic and very difficult. But was I depressed? Absolutely. Uh, my dad meant a lot to me. We were very good friends, and very difficult thing. And my struggle was really a testament to him and how important that relationship was to me. I would not have wanted to not be depressed. I experienced that difficult experience in honor and memory of him and still do. However, what I didn't do is change my life by stopping doing things that were healthy. That's called behavioral deactivation. And stopping doing things is what makes it worse. I still went to the gym. I still did my exercises. I still followed my diet. I still went to work. I'm a believer, so I still went to church. I still everything that was healthy. Did I want to do it? Oh, absolutely not. So what did I do? I did it anyway. If it's healthy, I did it. If it was unhealthy, I tried not to do it. I try to follow my sleep patterns. I wasn't in complete control of that. I can't really make myself go to sleep, but I don't want to take drugs to go to sleep. So when I couldn't sleep, I would get up and, you know, just sit with my thoughts and sit with my emotions. And eventually my sleep reset and I was able to sleep again and I sleep just fine. But I take no drugs, took no psychoactives. I just let myself embrace it. Grief is the tax we pay for the privilege of being in relationships. And it was a tax I was very happy to pay for my dad. If you'd have asked me, hey, you're going to go through this horrible thing since you have your dad, would you rather not have your dad so you wouldn't have to go through that? Absolutely not. That's the tax I paid for having him in my life, and I gladly pay it. So depression, you get into it and out of it in the same way. You radically accept that as part of life. You focus on your thinking. You focus on behavioral activation. Go, 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 do, don't stop. Give yourself a break and take rest, stuff like that. But behavioral deactivation is what keeps depression going. Behavioral deactivation, which with trauma we call avoidance, keeps trauma going.
Okay, and then as you said, a lot of people stop doing things. There's the thing they just don't want to get out of bed in the morning. They find normal tasks very difficult to do. Uh, what do you have to say about that? Do you think there is those things that like burnout, like that depression, that forces people to stay in bed, or do you think that it could be maybe a lack of discipline or just a lack of motivation? What do you think?
Well, the discipline motivation thing is kind of a big topic, and there's some guys on that I think do a great job. I think they really help a lot of people, but I think they are a bit confused about it. Jocko Willink is one, David Goggins is another. Have great respect for those guys, but they do get a little bit bass backwards, as my dad would say, because discipline is built on the back of motivation. Motivation is built on the back of meaning, and meaning is built on the back of thought processes. Masters of discipline are first masters of thinking. So your thinking directs you, and you decide in what is their meaning. Look at like a seesaw. You're going to do whatever you find the most meaning in. So be very careful of that, because that can be very, very off radar in your subconscious processes. And some people don't realize that they're telling themselves that there's more meaning in sitting on the couch than going for my cardio workout. Well, I mean, I struggle with that myself. I do a 5K run 3 days a week, and never, and I really do mean never, is there not a thought process that says, you could skip it and get this paperwork done. You could skip it and take a break. You could skip it and spend time with your wife. Skip, skip, skip. But why don't I skip it? Because there's more meaning in doing it. There's more meaning in doing it. And I don't wait until the moment to design that. I don't wait until the moment to program that. It's kind of like going to Walmart. You guys have Walmart in South Africa?
We don't have more, no. But
No Walmart. I'm sure you have
but
Walmart-like stores, retail stores. So
definitely, yeah.
when you, I don't want to put you on the spot, but how often do you shoplift when you go to these retail stores?
I know. I don't think I've ever shoplifted at the store.
You've never shoplifted. You can save lots of money. 5-finger discount, stick it in your pocket. Save a few bucks, make sure no one's watching, look around for the cameras, be real sneaky about it. As a kid, I was a shoplifter. I never got caught. I was really good at it. So it's a good thing I went to college. I would have become a criminal or something. So the thing is, why don't you shoplift? I mean, you guys think about, why don't you shoplift? Do you wait to get to the retail outlet and look around and say, gosh, am I going to steal it or pay for it? I bet you never even have that thought, do you?
No.
See, now the question is, why don't you have that thought? The answer that you may not have thought about is you've decided way ahead of time. You don't got to wait for the situation to decide. You've already decided. You've decided that you're not a thief. We call that character. Character is a pattern of living. We design through our thinking, our character, and then we live up to it. So that's the same way of doing my 5K. I don't wait to decide whether I'm going to keep my commitment to myself. I already made that call. I already made that decision. I don't, with my relationship, I don't get up every day and decide whether I'm going to get a divorce or not. I've already decided when I married my wife, there is no divorce. I decide that in advance. I don't decide if someone gets in my face, am I going to punch them out or whatever? And I'm a big guy. I'm 6'2". I weigh about 250. I used to do strongman contests. No, I'm going to make peace. Why? Because that is my character. I don't wait to get on scene to have a plan. I already have a plan. All I got to do, it's called character. All I have to do is live up to the character I have designed in advance. So it's the same way when it comes to doing things. I've already decided. I've literally already created that rut in my brain. All I have to do now, discipline is a rut in the brain, by the way. And discipline is making yourself do something even though you don't want to do it. You don't feel like doing it, but you do it anyway. Habit comes next. Habit is when you do it without even thinking about it. So for my 10K bike ride, I don't have to think about it. I have a time set that I go, and it doesn't matter. If it's the time to go, I go. It's when you it's when you give yourself an option. So discipline is when you stop giving yourself options to do other than what you have committed yourself to do. That's discipline. And then habit is when you no longer even have to think about it.
Okay. Okay, that's great. And I think on this note, I'm going to stop the recording.